Good afternoon, students. This is session 5 of Introduction to English Studies, Unit 2, Literary Terms and Linguistic Competence, prescribed for first semester optional English students, Tumkur University. In the earlier videos, we learnt about understanding the concepts related to poetry and theatre. This session helps you to understand the concepts related to fictional narratives. Let us begin with an understanding of fictional narratives. Fictional narratives are stories created from the imagination. They are imaginative and they contain interesting possibilities unknown in the real world. To understand fictional narratives, we must know about story, plot, and narrative techniques. A fictional narrative encompasses plots, characters, settings that may or may not reflect reality. They include magical and imagined characters, fantastical ideas, and predictions to explore different perspectives or to convey deeper meanings. They are not real, they are fictional. They serve as a means to explore themes, emotions, and ideas through storytelling. The reader will be engaged in ways that provoke their thoughts and reflections. Fictional narratives are not based on real events, but they are created from the imagination. They can be a source of enjoyment, but they can also be used to explore social issues, teach moral lessons, or convey philosophical ideas. Fictional narratives have a clear structure. They include elements like introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. Examples of fictional narratives are novels, fables, short stories, and certain plays. Even there are some non fictional narratives which include biographies, autobiographies, memoirs, and news reports. So, commonly spoken of fictional narratives are novels. A novel is a long written narrative. It will be normally in a prose, which describes fictional characters and events in the form of a sequential story. Another fictional narrative is novella. It is also a written form, a prose fictional narrative, normally longer than a short story but shorter than a novel. Thus, the purpose of narrative writing is to tell stories. Now, we have to learn some of the elements to understand these fictional narratives. So, what is narration? What is a story? They are important elements which you have to understand. These fictional narratives encourage critical thinking about storytelling techniques, character development, and underlying messages. So, now we will know about a narrative. What is a narrative and what is a story? A story is a specific sequence of events. It is narrative, it is a sequence. It tells the accounts of events and it is a prose fiction. Whereas a narrative is the overarching framework or perspective through which those events are presented. A story is what happened, while a narrative is how it is told and why it matters. So, there is a difference between a narrative and a story. Stories just explain events in a sequential order, whereas narrative gives it a framework. Narrative can be either fictional or imaginary, like fairy tales, fables, legend, thrillers, novels, etc. And they may also be non fictional or can be real, like memoir, biography, news report, documentary, travelogue, etc. So, narrative structure forms the backbone of storytelling. It is all about the plot, character, and themes which work together to create a compelling story that grabs and holds our attention. The technical aspect is the narrative, whereas the event is presented in the form of a story. The elements of the narrative are plot, character, point of view, setting, themes, conflict, and style. If a student understands all these elements, it helps them to analyze the narratives better. So the forms of different forms of stories are short stories, which is a short piece of prose fiction that can be read in one sitting. The novels are longer, they are more complex fictional narratives. Fairy tales are stories which have fantastical elements. They often contain morals. Myths and legends are traditional stories. They explain natural phenomena or historical events. News stories are reports of current events. Anecdotes are brief, amusing stories about specific events. What is a story? What is the difference between a story and a plot? E.M. Foster, a renowned novelist, explains when reading a story, we wonder, we'll ask, and then? Whereas, while evaluating a plot, we ask, why? So, plot is a way for a story to be told. In storytelling, plot refers to the sequence of events that make up a story, including the cause and effect relationship between them. It is the order in which the events occur. It establishes the timeline of the narrative. So, in broad terms, plot is the description of events significant to the conflict and conflict resolution. According to Aristotle, plot is the most important element of a story or drama. It is what ties all of the components together and allows us to follow the narrative. He defines plot as arrangement of incidents within a story. So he stresses that plot should be structurally arranged. They should have a logic with a beginning, middle, and an end. So, plot is a crucial element that drives the narrative forward and keeps the reader engaged. Elements of the plot include introducing the setting, characters, and situation, which is called exposition. Rising action means building tension and conflict. Climax is the peak of the conflict, and falling events, falling action, are the events following the climax, and the final is the resolution or the final outcome. So, these are the components of a plot. So the plot has a structure of events, whereas the story encompasses all aspects of the narrative, including character, setting, theme, and plot. So the difference between story and plot is, as Alan Moore says, always remember that the plot is not a story. It is just what gets you from one end of the story to the other. So that is the plot. Important components of fictional narratives are story and plot. There are some components which include narrative structures and narrative techniques. How to build a narrative? Now let us have a glance of the narrative structures. There are many types of stories, many themes of stories, many types of plots. Critics have recognized 7 different types of plots that makes up the narrative structure. The first one, the common themes of many stories is overcoming the monster. The hero must defeat an villain who threatens him and the wider world. This is the common theme of many stories, common plot of many stories, overcoming the monster. Another common theme of stories is rags to riches. That is, the hero achieves something remarkable and he gains what he loses and then gets his richness once again. He moves from rags to riches. He is poor, but at the end of the story, he regains his richness. Some stories have such narrative structure. The other plot of a narrative structure are the quest. The quest means search. The hero goes in search of a treasure or a place, or he goes outside to overcome challenges that comes along the way. So this plot, such narratives have a plot of a quest. Some stories have plot of voyage and return. For example, the protagonist travels to a strange land and then he experiences various hardships. He makes discoveries and return home with lessons which he has learnt. So there are some such narratives, and we can also see a comedy. Comedy is light-hearted, happy ending story. There will be a tragedy wherein the hero has flaws. He makes a mistake, and that leads to serious consequences, catastrophe, or death. Some stories have the plot of a rebirth, wherein the hero undergoes transformation and he becomes a better person because of his transformation. So the narrative structure has very many types of plots. So how can narrative become efficient? How can it achieve its effectivity on the reader? Let us look upon the narrative techniques. Narrative techniques are methods. Methods used to construct and convey a story. They are not only methods, they also include literary devices. How a story writer has constructed and how he uses these literary devices to craft a story. That is called the narrative technique. They also include various elements like plot, character, setting, perspective, and style. All these components together work together to shape the narrative. They are called tools, which helps the stories to be told in a compelling and meaningful way. In the first and second session of this unit, you have understood many things about literary devices. These literary devices can be used as narrative techniques to provide deeper meaning for the reader and help to understand the story with the use of imagination and by visualizing situations. Some of the common techniques relevant to style or the language chosen to tell a story are literary devices, which include metaphors, similes, imagery, hyperbole, and alliteration. This is one technique using varieties of literary devices. Some of the common techniques for plots include linear technique, that is, the story is told in a chronological order, year wise, date wise, like that. Non linear techniques, where the events are presented out of order by using flashback or flash forward techniques. Then there will be some techniques of plot twists, wherein unexpected events that change the direction of the story. And we also have foreshadowing, that is, hints or clues about future events, which will be dealt in the next video in detail. So, these are the common techniques for plots, whereas there are some techniques for characters, which include character development. That is, the process of making the character believable and relatable, how a character changes throughout the story. So, these are some techniques. Dialogue is also one technique wherein conversation between characters reveal their inner thoughts, internal monologues, which reveal the character's thoughts and feelings. They are also techniques of character. So, techniques of setting includes setting means the time and place where the story takes place. The techniques of for setting include descriptive language, that is using variety of language to create a strong sense of place, and using the setting as a symbol to represent deeper themes and ideas. There are also some techniques for perspective or points of view. So this refers to who is telling the story from which point of view. Perspective techniques or points of view techniques include first person narrative, that is, the story is told from the perspective of the character using I. That is also called first person narrative. The second person narrative is the story is told from the perspective of you. In the third person limited narrative, the narrator knows the thoughts and feelings of only one character. In an omniscient third person narrative, the narrator knows the thoughts and feelings of all the characters. So, this is about point of view. Point of view means who is telling the story from whose advantage point of view. They are all techniques, narrative techniques to present a story. So, techniques regarding style include using figures of speech like metaphor, simile to create vivid imagery. Pacing is one such technique for style. Pacing means controlling the speed at which the story is revealed. Tone is also another technique for style. The author's attitude towards the subject matter also matters. So, there are techniques of themes. What is the theme or underlying message or idea explored in the story? And another technique is to present the conflict, the struggle between the opposing forces in the story, which can be internal, that is, within the character, there may be conflicts, or there may be conflicts externally, that is, between characters and the environment. So, various types of techniques are adapted by the writer to explore the themes within a story. By mastering these techniques, the writers can create engaging, meaningful, and memorable narratives. So, in the next part of the session, next part of the video, we will be exploring other various narrative techniques in detail, like foreshadowing, flashback, and about dialogues you have already learned, and symbols. Symbols are metaphors, extended metaphors, which add meaning to the story. And stream of consciousness is a technique used by modern writers to explore the feelings or emotions in the internal of the character. So sometimes there may be an unreliable narrator, which is also used as a narrative technique. So by exploring these narrative techniques, by understanding what is a plot, what is a plot structure, different types of plot structures, and how is a story different from a plot, we can understand fictional narratives better. Thank you.